Let's move on to Spurs now. And anything would be better than what we saw from Spurs last season. Quite the job for Roberto De Zerbi. There were questions on whether he could be the relegation specialist with his style of play. Well, they managed to save themselves there, but we know that Spurs definitely do not believe that they belong in any relegation battle. Now they got a win over Hoffenheim, as many probably would have expected today. They have some players on the way out, like Jed Spence, who literally just announced his farewell to the Tottenham faithful. But now, big win over Hoffenheim, preseason. What are your thoughts on how Spurs are looking now?
They look good. But we've said that before. Some of the biggest problems, if I have to think, back last 5-7 years, they've always done a lot of transfers in the season. The problem with that is that it takes a while for everybody to gel, right, to put that together. And I think we've seen that, bar one season where they had a great start, and then, I remember game against Chelsea, a couple of red cards and then injuries, right? Injuries are second part of it, because it seems to me that there's no other team like Spurs in the Premier League that had so many injuries, but so many injuries to key players, the Kulusevskis of the world and James Maddison, and you can go on and on and on and on and on, right? And they've had so many managers that couldn't find a way. I just got a gut feeling that De Zerbi is that kind, that little bit of toughness, that competitiveness, and I think he really truly makes players accountable, right? He's going to be the manager that nobody's going to be bigger than a team. Perhaps we've said that about other coaches that they've had recently, but I never got that feeling. So I think De Zerbi can. He's got some great players. We saw Tonali today, that first goal. Yeah. I'm sure you saw it, right? I mean, the first touch that everybody's talking about, and Andy Robertson, obviously great delivery, and a good finish from Richarlison. That has to be healthy and has to be good for a change, because he hasn't been, right. We see it in glimpses. Mikey Moore, 2 goals. Tell, that combination today, 2 assists from Tell and Mikey Moore. I don't know if Mikey Moore is going to be the first player to go to, but at least that he's capable. And I think we've seen that. Kudus, if he comes back, so many key players that they need to count on. Now, Mateus Fernandes, I think there's immense talent there. We saw that at West Ham, even though they struggled. Bergvall, who I think, if I remember correctly, asked to go to be transferred, but he's given a chance. And I think at least today he's taken advantage of that. Senesi, I think he was on a free, wasn't he, when he left Bournemouth? I thought a lot of teams are going to go after him. Maybe some did, but obviously Spurs got him. Pedro Porro, sensational player in the World Cup. I never thought, most of us probably never thought that we'd be talking about Pedro Porro on a World Cup winning team as one of the best, if not the best player out there. If it wasn't for Rodri, he'd probably be the best player on that team. So, there's just so much to go to when you look at Van Hecke, I think, from Brighton. With Van de Ven, I think that could be a good combination. Obviously, they're always their captain. I don't think it's the worst thing with Romero. I never had a good feeling about him at Spurs. It seems to me he plays better for Argentina than he's ever played for Spurs. He was the captain that was always injured and always suspended. At least it seemed that way. So maybe freshening that up just a little bit is going to be helpful. So, look, bottom line is, I think this is a very, very good and deep team to make a run this time at the top 4 as well, right? If they stay healthy, and again, De Zerbi, for me, my type of coach, I think he came there at the right time.
Yeah, I think Christian Romero definitely will find more of a happy hunting ground for his style of play at Atletico Madrid and with Cholo Simeone than he did anywhere in the Premier League or at Spurs. But that's a story for another day. Let's talk about Mikey Moore, because you did mention him as well. And as you said, De Zerbi is still feeling things out, but at least he scored twice today. He's looked pretty lively. He's got a nice little link up there with Matthias Tell. Has he at least probably done enough to give Roberto De Zerbi something to think about, at least for the first game against Brentford?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, obviously, if you look at the depth of that squad, right? You think of Mohamed Kudus, Xavi Simons, right? It's going to take time for some of the players that are injured. We have Solanke. I suppose he's given him something to think about. Again, my gut feeling is that maybe not just yet, but at the beginning of the season, it's quite possible. But I'm still not convinced. I think what he's got going for him, in that position. Two players that could possibly play there, are gone at the moment. And another player like Kulusevski, I don't know at the moment if he's, he's missed the entire season, right? He's missed the World Cup as well. He's ready to be there, but, they're probably going to work him in, slowly, in a smart way, I would say. So is it possible for Mikey Moore? Well, I'll tell you what, scoring 2 goals in the last friendly, I think it's the last friendly. Sorry, I didn't look. That goes a long way sometimes in the mind of a manager.
Yeah, it absolutely does go a long way. And then could this finally be the season that we see the best of Tell? What do you think? Or am I getting ahead of myself there, especially if that link up with Moore continues?
I think we have to. We almost have to. How long are we going to wait? And as I said, De Zerbi is not going to let you off the hook. You're not going to play. If you play badly for 2 or 3 games, I don't think he's giving you benefit of the doubt, and that's why they have such a deep squad right now. Because some players look at Tonali. We knew he was going to walk into this team and no questions asked, and he did that today, obviously. So I just think that this is going to be a very competitive team, because I think the culture that's created by De Zerbi, no matter where he goes, is such. He hasn't been successful absolutely everywhere, but I always feel that his team is always ready to play. When they don't deliver, he's not afraid to let you know. He's not afraid to change it. And I think that's what this Spurs team needs.
Sandro Tonali, now, of course, there were a lot of eyebrows raised when they saw the price tag. Some could say he justified it with just what we saw today. But again, others will say that, look, it's just preseason. But how important do you think he will be in terms of transforming this midfield to what De Zerbi wants it to be, Janusz?
Super. What a great player. Look, we all know what happened at Newcastle, for one season, but every time he's on the pitch, you see that quality. For me, it's that intelligence, right? He sees everything. That's what he asked from a central midfielder, right? Head on the swivel. I always felt that. I, as a defender, was very often in trouble bringing the ball out of the back, right? So who do you look for? You look for somebody that no matter what kind of ball you give him, he's going to be able to keep possession. And that's what I think of Tonali. Very much two-way player, not afraid to get dirty in terms of defending. Obviously, with that vision, he can score, he can assist. I think he's a superb player. And everybody that's watched him over his career, I think probably agrees with me. So, look, Spurs have always a plethora of midfielders, of players. Their Spurs squad has always been big and kind of deep, if you ask me, in quality. But I think when you look at a player like him, James Maddison comes to mind, but James Maddison is not such a two-way player, not the same as Tonali.
Mm-hmm. And since you did mention, of course, that you are very defensive minded, let me ask you this, because we know how Roberto De Zerbi likes his teams to play. They have obviously live on the riskier side with that possession, but it does create for an exciting style of football. But they got the 3 goals today and they kept a clean sheet. How long can that last defensively? We will see. Basically, are you 100% convinced by this kind of new look defense that we're seeing at Spurs?
Well, I think if, De Zerbi does play a risky game, he does like to attack. He likes to entertain, right? But I think he's a very, balanced manager. I think he's going to pay just as much attention to a team defending, right, and the discipline as he will pay attention to the game going forward. So I don't see this as a problem. Look, as I mentioned, you get Pedro Porro, who I thought, I don't know what your take was on it, but I've heard many people that were so surprised with what he did in Spain. Yeah. I get that, but even when he played for Spurs at their worst, he was always the workhorse, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. He was always the one that was playing on both sides of the ball. There was never a result, even when they're losing 2-3-0, 4-0, where he stopped playing or caring. So to a degree, it wasn't a massive surprise. But imagine how he must feel now coming back from the World Cup. What sort of extra leadership he's going to bring to that team? Because I thought he was one of the leaders who's always done on the pitch in a terrible, terrible season. Spurs almost went down, right? So no surprise, but I can only imagine how confident he must be right now coming in there. And Van de Ven and Van Hecke, I think they're very much capable there. On the left side, you have, Robertson today. You still have Udogi, right, on that side. So I think it's pretty good. Maybe goalkeeping situation. I know Kinski's done well. We all remember his beginnings, right? The howlers and all that, but he's gotten himself to be number one, I think, over Vicario. But when I look at the combination, I'm not saying they're bad, but maybe, just maybe, a little bit of a question mark.
A little bit of a question mark. All right. So for Spurs fans, Janusz, it sounds like they should feel positive going into the season.
First time in a long time, because they've had great squads, great players, but I just always feel that by the time you gel, it's sometimes too late. It's almost no different this time, but I think you're getting some of the players that you've had back, right? And the transfer window this time was smart. It wasn't 7, 8, 9 players. I know we still have a little bit of time. Maybe that's gonna be that. A bonus that De Zerbi was there and saved them, right, towards the end. I think that's a bonus. It's not like a new coach coming into a new season with a new team. So that's a bit of a bonus.